Have you ever seen a homemade mini welding device come to life using nothing more than a simple safety pin? It sounds strange, even a bit unbelievable, but it's absolutely real. Alright, enough talking, let's roll up our sleeves and start building this thing together. Here I've added a small set of bolts and nuts in just the right size. They may look simple, but they make it much easier to secure everything firmly to the safety pin. More importantly, this little hardware set acts as a reliable middleman, creating a solid connection between the safety pin and the welding tip, keeping the whole setup stable during use. Next up, I've got a single-way electrical connector here. A small part, but a surprisingly useful one. Normally it's meant for joining wires, but in this build, I'm putting it to work in a different role. I'll use it as an intermediate connector between the threaded bolt and the homemade welding tip, helping everything lock together into one solid, durable assembly. After securing one side of the connector onto the threaded body of the bolt, I move on to the next step, connecting the power wire. This is the part where we create the electrical link between the device and the power source, bringing the whole setup one step closer to working. Before connecting the remaining power wire, I'll take a moment to make a handle for this homemade welding device using a short piece of PVC pipe. As long as it feels comfortable and secure in your hand, you're free to get creative here and design the handle in your own way. I'm using the simplest method to secure the safety pin inside the PVC pipe. First, I wrap it with a bit of tissue paper until it fits snugly inside the pipe. Once everything is tight and properly positioned, I add some glue to lock it in place and keep it stable. With this remaining power wire, I'll attach an alligator clip. Doing it this way makes it much easier to connect directly to the positive terminal of the power source when it's time to use the device. For anyone who's not familiar with it, this is an alligator clip. It's a small spring-loaded clamp with serrated jaws, designed to grip onto electrical terminals or bare wires securely. Thanks to its simple design, it allows for quick, temporary connections without the need for screws or tools. Very handy for testing and DIY setups like this one. Do you think the carbon core inside a standard AA battery could really be turned into a homemade welding tip? At first glance, it sounds like a stretch, but let's slow down and look at what's actually inside one of these everyday power sources. AA batteries are everywhere. They quietly power remote controls, wall clocks, toys, and countless small electronic devices without us giving them much thought. Inside certain types of AA batteries, there's a carbon rod at the center. Its original job isn't to heat things up, but to act as a current collector, helping electricity flow steadily through the battery. What makes this carbon core interesting is its ability to conduct electricity while also tolerating relatively high temperatures compared to many common materials. Carbon doesn't melt like metal, and under electrical load, it can glow and generate heat in a controlled way. That combination, electrical conductivity and heat resistance, is exactly what draws the attention of DIY builders. When electricity passes through carbon, it can concentrate heat at the tip, making it useful for localized heating tasks. In theory, this allows the carbon core to function as a simple, makeshift welding or soldering tip for small-scale experiments. Of course, this doesn't replace a proper tool, but it does demonstrate how understanding material properties can open the door to creative, unconventional solutions. So, the real value here isn't just the battery itself but the lesson behind it. Sometimes, familiar objects hide materials with surprising potential, if you know what role they play and why they work the way they do. And just like that, a homemade welding tip is born. When installing the tip into its proper position, remember to use only moderate force. Tighten the screw just enough to hold it securely. Applying too much force can easily cause the welding tip to crack or break. Of course, we can't skip the step of making a connector for the negative terminal of the power source. The structure is quite simple, just a length of electrical wire with alligator clips attached to both ends. This gives us a flexible and reliable way to complete the circuit during operation. The power source I trust for this setup is a small battery pack. It delivers a stable, reasonable amount of power for this homemade antenna device, without causing any unnecessary hassle during use. When an electric arc appears as the two terminals of the power source touch each other, that's a clear sign of success. The small tests that follow don't really challenge this homemade setup at all. And if you want a fair real-world assessment of how effective this DIY antenna device truly is, make sure to watch until the very end of the video for the most accurate perspective. And that brings this build to a close. From a handful of everyday parts to a working homemade setup, this project proves one simple thing. Creativity matters just as much as tools. It's not about replacing professional equipment, but about understanding how things work and daring to experiment. If this little build sparked an idea or simply made you see familiar objects a bit differently, then it's done its job. Thanks for watching all the way to the end, and as always, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next project.